If you love classic contemporary Christian music and the people that made it, please like this video and subscribe to our channel to help support us and keep us going. This is Stage Right, and I am your host, John Thorne. They say if you die with a handful of friends, you die a rich man. Well, I have several buses full, and I'm very excited to share them all with you. Welcome to Stage Right. I am your host, John Thorne. This is episode 42. I appreciate you tuning in today and listening. I want to thank you for supporting the podcast. Don't forget to share it. Tell your friends about it, your family. If you know friends that love contemporary Christian music, tell them about it. Don't forget to go to YouTube, pull up Stage Right at John Thorne, our channel. Subscribe to our channel, like our videos. Just help support us in that way. It'll help us down the road as we try to continue to grow the show. My super duper surprise is coming up right after this quick word from our sponsor, Hey Rockstar.
Hey Rockstar provides digital marketing software and services to generate more leads, more exposure, and more revenue for your business or organization. Let Hey Rockstar amplify your awesomeness.
Wow, synchronize your watches.
We run a tight ship.
Amazing.
Oh, dude, how are you, man?
How the heck are you?
I'm good. I love it when my Swiss Army knife and the planets all line up.
Yeah, there you go.
I think that's what they refer to as Swiss time. So, Gersh, how the heck are you today?
I'm good. Richie told me yesterday morning that he listened to your podcast. He had a riot listening to it about Miyagi. I didn't know you'd done it yet.
Yeah, part 1 was last week and part 2 is this week. So what I thought would be hilarious is since he and I are in the middle of our conversation about Whiteheart and we're talking about you guys, I thought it would be fun for you to talk about him first.
Oh, that's cool.
Nobody knows Miyagi
better than you.
Well, I was going to say no one knows him better than you, but we both know him really well. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. Well, and the relationship that you two guys had was amazing. We can get into that, but the way that it carried on, he's a great friend.
Yeah, he sure is. Okay, so I want you to talk about Miyagi. I want you to set him up for part 2 today. So all the continents we traveled to, all the international travel, all the tours we did domestically, we've known him for years. He helped us every year with our Awaiting Emmanuel Christmas musical. Take it away, dude. Mark Meana, in the words of Mark Gershmill.
I love people who can do what I can't. Mm-hmm. I love it. It's amazing to see people in their gifts, be creative, doing their thing the way only they can do it. And there's a wonderful freeing aspect that, there is none of what they're doing I can do.
Right.
And I'm so grateful that they're there. And Mark Meana is that guy. Miyagi is amazing at what he does.
Yeah.
And it's just, this is going to sound like a nutty analogy, but it's true for a lot of your listeners. And it's a thing about when you step on a stage as a performer, you have a feeling for the lights. And I literally I've always felt this, and I felt it intensely with Miyagi, is when you're up there as a performer, you're wearing the lights.
Yeah.
And if somebody knows what you're trying to play and what you're trying to say, oh my gosh, the difference. And then the only thing I can compare it to for people who maybe haven't had that experience of being on a stage is when you step out of your front door and there's a beautiful spring breeze and you're tired of the winter and you just feel the sense of release that is, or vice versa, the bracing cold, or it's just as it is around here right now, the stifling heat in the humidity is like a blanket that falls over you. You're immediately reacting to that. Well, if you're a performer on stage, you react to lights that way.
Yep.
And so when there is somebody as gifted as Mark Miyagi,
yeah,
it makes all the difference in the world. The way the evening feels, the way you play, what you think happened that night, all that matters, because somebody had a gift that you didn't have, and he brought the best of what he did every night. He's an artist. He paints with lights. He moves the lights. He paints with colors.
Yep.
It's an astonishing feeling to be part of something that he has orchestrated.
Yeah. And years ago, doing the White Hart stuff, it was awesome. But dude, fast forward 15 years and 20 years, and we were doing a waiting Emmanuel, and he would show up with a semi full of gear and set up for a week, and we'd do lunch every day, dinner every night, get to hang out, just literally get to just enjoy each other. We didn't have a grind of driving 600 miles a day. We just got to hang and just got to chill. And some really, really special times when you guys came up and we did that Christmas musical.
Yeah, he's and this. There is an art to hanging,
Yes.
my man.
Yes, there is.
You are the man, Bajamba.
Oh.
But he is also. He's just such a likable person, and he brings such. I mean, he has said some of the funniest stuff I've ever heard. It is utterly unexpected, but he's so sensitive to what everybody is thinking in the room. And yes, we're going to laugh our heads off around him because there's just funny stuff that's going on.
Yeah.
But it's partly that, what brings us all together is when you share in a journey, and especially in something like when he was so kind to be part of Awaiting Emmanuel, the Christmas musical that we did. Mm-hmm. And it was a subject that needed a lot of finesse. It needed a lot of insight. And of course he brought it, in spades, as he always did. It's just like, it's Van Gogh with the brushes. But when you go through a thing like that and exhaust yourself in trying to tell a story and you get to the end, boy, that's when the great stuff happens too. Those hangs.
Yep.
Mean the world,
Yeah.
It just means the world. And when you got somebody like that, that when he's not only a coworker, but you'll want to have him over to your house because he's a great friend.
Yeah.
That's the stuff that life. You always wish that life would be like that, and when it really is like that, you savor every moment.
Right. One of the coolest things to me about it is I was a road manager, then I was a bass player. You were a band guy. Miyagi was lighting guy. Richie was sound guy. But if we went and did lunch today or went and played four of us went and played a round of golf and then went and ate afterwards, it would be just like we were on the bus 30 years ago. We wouldn't miss a beat.
Oh, completely. And, I think that's one, it's a part of you. We were discussing that the other day, Bryn, my wife and I, that was just that you with your multitudinous ideas, but also you can hang with anybody and you can bring something in almost, every situation, that both those guys, Richie and Miyagi, are just so great at what they did. And,
yes.
I always have said this about Richie, he's such an artist. He cares, sometimes I felt like he cared even more so than some of the band members about making it great, making it artistic, making excellence
right.
be the thing. And Miyagi's exactly the same way.
Absolutely.
He's, it's, if past his standards, we're going to be well happy if he passes his standards. But then you could sit in the same room and it's, there's no artistic high and mighty going on.
No.
It's just we're hanging and we all shared in this epic journey together of just blending our gifts and telling a story and trying to reach people, in the name of the living God, and what could be better than that?
Right. Okay. Do me a favor.
Yeah.
Introduce our good friend, Mark Miyagi Meana.
Well, this is an unexpected privilege because it's not every day that you get to talk about somebody who you respect so much. And this is a rare one, people. You're about to talk, you hear the voice and the thoughts of a rare individual. Mark Miyagi is one of the greatest lighting people that can be found anywhere on planet Earth. Yep. And you are in for a treat today because I know that Thorne is going to make you laugh and it's going to make him laugh. And you're going to get to find out the heart of what a great lighting person is all about. But even more than that, you're going to find out what a great person is about. Enjoy, Mark Miyagi.
Okay, Miyagi. So we're going to play a little game called To Tell the Truth. I'm going to mention a name of someone in Whiteheart, and you're going to tell me what you think of them as a person. Number one, let's start with little Ricky Florian. Rick Florian.
When I talk about it, just a great human being, Rick was so great a human being that there were times where he wouldn't understand what someone was talking about. He was naive in a lot of ways that I'm sure he learned about later, the things they were discussing. But it's his innocence and being a person who had never had to deal with some things that so he could maintain his innocence went right along with his energy as like you would think he was 12 years old.
He did have wonder about him. He would look around with some childlike wonder. Okay, Billy Smiley.
Well, Billy Smiley, whatever. The biggest thing I remember about Billy is when he was in the bus playing cards and didn't realize we were starting a show.
Right. Yeah. Yep. I would go out to the bus and say, okay, Bill, 5 minutes. Yep. Okay.
Right, man. Right. Okay. I got you.
Billy loved it, though. He loved being in Whiteheart, loved being out on the road.
Yeah.
Okay. So you came up and did our Christmas musical for 10 years.
You're kidding. I did it that long?
Well, we did Awaiting Emmanuel 5 years, and then you did the other musicals we did for at least 5 years. So yeah, at least 10 years. So 5 of those years, Awaiting Emmanuel, Bryn, and Gersh. So let's talk about Mark Gershmill. What do you think of when you think of Gersh?
Well, Gersh was so sophisticated and that he was so above me when he would talk that I would just look at him and say, yeah, I know what you mean. And I hadn't a clue what he was talking about. He's just so brilliant.
Yeah.
He's and talented, which to the point that where even someone like me who doesn't notice people in music and their talents, he stands out.
Yes, he does. He also stands out to me because he's the only friend I have that reads The Economist while riding his stationary bike.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he knows about everything.
Yes, he is very informed. Okay, next name, Brian Wooten.
Oh, Brian Wooten is just not only amazing guitars because he's gone on to do other things, but someone I am incredibly in debt to because he was instrumental, no pun intended, in getting me the lighting gig with Trace Atkins, who he currently is playing with.
Yes, the Celebrity Apprentice, winner of the Celebrity Apprentice.
Yeah, and Brian would just call me up and I think maybe he was paying me back for the tickets when we did Night of Joy down at Disney, because I had no desire. It was 2 weekends in a row at Disney, when they did,
Right.
would have their CCM Music Awards, I think they would do during there. And we had the whole week off in between, and I'm like, so they give us tickets, and Brian had his kids, and he needed more tickets, and I'm like, here, take mine. Because I just went and rented a car and drove around Florida and enjoyed the fact that we were in nice warm weather and found a beach and went in the ocean and things of that nature for the weekend between the weekends. So maybe that was what he was paying me back for, but I still feel I owe him one.
He is a good dude for sure.
If not more than one.
All right. Anthony Salee. What do you think of Anthony?
Amazingly talented, because that's the thing I was referring to with Richie Biggs. I'm like, what is that sound? Like that right there. And he said, that's the bass. I said, that's the bass guitar? He goes, yeah, pretty incredible, huh? And I'm like, yeah, I didn't even know a bass could make that sound.
Yeah. Yep. Anthony is wildly talented.
But by the same token, to me, he was the youngest in the music industry of all the musicians.
Right.
And as a result, it didn't go through some of the things like you. I tell you, the podcast, that's what this thing is called, right?
This is.
Okay. Anyway, he was from Truth.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what truth was, let alone that you were in truth and what you had gone through and the dues that you paid to on your entering into the industry,
Right.
and this particular market. And it blew my mind to hear the things you had the dues you had paid.
Right.
It's incredible. And I never knew in all these years, because you could tell me how many years probably it is that we've known each other. All these years, I never knew anything about any of that.
Oh, that's wild. Yeah. And oh, by the way, we've known each other 29 years this year.
Really?
Yep.
Well, we should do some, celebration or something. Maybe some fireworks since I missed them the other night.
We'll see if we can fit that into the program. Okay. John Knox.
Oh, John Knox. Do you remember when we were flying?
Yes.
And John
I know where you're going.
was leaning over the seats. It was like a small plane or something. And there was one flight attendant, and it was very shaky plane and stuff. And she comes walking through with a tray of drinks. And he was leaning over a seat talking to somebody, and he waved his arms and knocked the whole tray of drinks into the guy across the way from him, who is sitting with a cowboy hat and a suit. What's the big cowboy hat manufacturer, the expensive one?
Stetson.
Yeah, he's got like a Stetson and a suit to go along with it, and she dumps all these drinks on him.
Lots and lots of Coca-Cola all over, dude.
And it was so funny because I think it was Gersh she was talking to, and Gersh's like, "Dude, are you gonna help her wipe down?" He goes, "Why? It's not my job. Besides, she ran into my gesture."
She walked into my gesture. And dude, I was standing in the back of the plane, and I watched it happen, and he was leaning on the back of the seat, and then out of nowhere, he decided to stretch. So he threw both arms out and caught that poor girl's tray full of Coke. I watched her pour them. It was sugar all over this cowboy.
Oh yeah. And I was just holding it back it was hysterically funny, and yet you felt for the guy at the same time. So it was like mixed emotions, and you could see the flight attendant, her face like
she wanted to kill him.
I would very much like to say something to this gentleman who got these drinks over at this moment, but I'm not allowed to.
Funniest thing he ever said in all the years I knew him, she walked into my gesture.
Yeah, but John was the first drummer I had ever seen with chops.
Chops for days, man.
Because I didn't even understand what chops were. When I played drums, all I knew was how to lay down and hold the beat. I had nothing fancy, and I thought these things other people were doing were fancy. And then I watched what John was doing, and it was incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Fantastic drummer.
Yeah. And I mean, the independence of his limbs.
Yeah.
Like it's like they were all four separate talking to each other.
Right.
And then one could say, "Hey, I'm going to go over and do something different here for a bit." And it wouldn't affect the rest of it. And I thought, how can you do that?
Right.
Mine are all linked together like they got gears,
What do you remember? What's your favorite memory of Richie Biggs working side by side with him all those years?
Well, Richie is just such a great person.
Yeah.
He's amazing sound guy.
Yeah.
And I learned things from him and noticed things in music and songs because it would get to a point I go, what is that I'm hearing there? And he would describe to me what was going on. And it was just amazing because I never noticed that kind of stuff. Music to me was a general, more of a big picture thing. And it produced images in my mind that I would try to, how I would approach the lights. And then I would try to program it to duplicate that. But he was just such a great guy.
Yeah.
Great person all the way around. But I remember when we lost him for a while,
yeah,
and then he came back, and I was so happy to see him. And everybody, when we were getting on the bus, and Richie was sitting there, it's like, Rich, you're back on. And the funniest thing was Richie's line, because at one point we were having breakfast on the bus one time, and somebody said something funny, and I bust out laughing, and I literally shot a Cheerio halfway across the front lounge out of my nose. And so Richie referred to that. He said, well, I just came back because I watch Miyagi shoot Cheerios out his nose again.
Oh, you want to hear one of the surprises of your day? Can I surprise you?
Yeah, lay it on me.
Richie called me a couple of weeks ago, or he sent me a message. I called him back. He listens to my podcast every week.
Oh, really?
So say something to Richie. Give him a shout out.
Richie, get the Cheerios ready. I'm coming your way. But I can only have skim milk anymore.
Oh, that's awesome. We love Richie Biggs. He's amazing, amazing friend, amazing sound engineer. Okay, so let's get to the Jeep. So we're going on a 3-day safari.
Can I back you up a second? Because
sure.
Do you remember that when we went there, everybody was scared for us to go?
Yeah, of course.
And the reason was because there had just been...
Because, well, it was the day before, because when we got on the plane to fly from Miami to Johannesburg was when the newspaper USA Today is at the airport. And the other thing about it is Nelson Mandela had just been let out of prison not long before that, and apartheid had ended. So this was the reaction to all of that.
Yeah, and it was shortly before we went to Johannesburg.
Right. Okay, one more name, and then we'll move on. Jeff Nolte.
Well, Jeff Nolte, he was very talented and very well known in the industry, and very much, how shall I say, knew that he knew it all.
He was very aware of what he thought he knew.
Yeah, and he was very knowledgeable, and he could do it. But it always disturbed me. So I finally one time learned enough about sound that, because he would reach over when he was doing the sound and literally bring up one of my faders, and I'd be looking at the stage going, what's going on? And I'd look down, and he was messing with me. So I finally went to an audio company and learned enough about the board, because I knew nothing about audio, and learned about this knob that would be a gain that you could turn something in or out of what's on that channel. And I found out where the reverb on the snare was. So he was doing that one night. He did it. I said, man, you really don't want to do that. It's getting to the point where it's affecting my show, and I don't want my reputation affected by this and so on. And he just laughed at me. So at one point he was misdirected off to the other direction, and I just rolled a reverb right off the snare.
Oh, that's funny. And
so at the end of the night, he was telling the sound company we had there that, yeah, well, you got to do maintenance on your equipment, because, I couldn't, there was nothing when I would be trying to get these things going and so on, there was no verb on the snare. And I caught his conversation with him. I said, oh, well, let me help you with that. All you got to do is take this knob right here and turn it up.
That is beautiful.
He never messed with my light board after that.
That is awesome.
Never messed with it after that.
Right. I have a similar story where he was messing with me and I responded back a certain way, and he never messed with me after that. It was kind of funny, but I won't get into all of that right now. But Nolte is a trip. I love Jeff, and he was a funny guy, but man, he used to love to push people's buttons for sure.
Jeff Nolte, what do you think of? And I guess my answer should have been, well, he's a real practical joker. And that's actually what I the word I think that would have summed up what I was trying to say.
Sure. Well, say it and I'll edit it in.
I just did.
You know what I mean.
Yeah. Just, okay, let's take it from the top and action.
Okay, Miyagi, what do you think of Jeff Nolte?
Practical joker. It says it all. That says it all with it.
Oh, dude, that's funny.
Yeah. an amazing technical sound guy. It's just absolutely amazing.
Right. Okay, so let's move on. All right, so we talked about our safari in Africa, but we didn't talk yet about the day I was watching the 700 Club, and all of a sudden you popped up on the screen and you're riding in the back row of a Jeep in a safari at Disney World with Fred Hammond. Tell me about that story.
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, amazingly enough, Fred Hammond, I ended up going back to Johannesburg and actually a 2-week tour of South Africa, going to Cape Town, Soweto, and other cities. And we got a little bit of royal treatment on that one. You know, we went to Mandela's house that he was born in and so on, raised in.
Wow.
So I went back there. I ended up going back to South Africa after that. And we actually did the Rand Easter show. So I did that again.
That's incredible. Did you see our German friend, the promoter?
No, I didn't. But see, Joe, it's interesting because, you know, if you don't have knowledge of other areas, it's like my misconception of what they would have for production capabilities there.
Right.
I used to go with Fred every December to a big event in Lagos, Nigeria.
Yeah.
And it was huge. It was in the Coliseum. It was like 140,000 people.
Wow.
It was unbelievable. And but that trip, you know, like we didn't have to do anything for Johannesburg, whereas you go to Nigeria, it was 9 shots and malaria pills and some other pills, and you had to spray your clothes down before you went, and don't eat any lettuce or anything like that, you know, because you could become violently ill. And
right.
So I was happy that we only went for a day.
Now, how long were you on the road? You were on the road with Fred for a long time.
About 13 years.
Oh my gosh, that's a long time.
Yeah, 13 years that I actually did his shows, his commission reunion shows. Met Marvin Sapp, who was part of commission, you know, and he was from Western Michigan, and then ended up doing his DVD shoot because Marvin and I got to know each other, and but traveling. I had another artist, Marco Barrientos, who it was amazing to travel with because it was all through South America. And the amazing thing was the fact that I don't speak Spanish. Right. And I would go on these sites and I would have to figure out with little X's and O's and drawings on paper with numbers and figure out how to get them to set up what I need to the way I need it so that I could program it up and do the show, and without speaking any Spanish at all.
Well, you've got the temperament and the personality to actually figure out how to do that.
Yeah, but I learned that after years. When I was with Whiteheart, I did not have that temperament. It had to be learned. And I can remember the day when Rick Florian came back and said, "Mark, the guy you chased off the stage, that was the promoter." And I said, "Okay, what's the problem?" And he said, "Well, you can't chase the..." I said, "It's my stage when I'm busy working."
Well, you've got cases all over and you've got trusses and cables run everywhere. You don't want anybody breaking their neck, tripping over your stuff.
Rick had to say, "Yeah, okay, but we're going to introduce you to the promoter from now on, so you'll know who he is."
At least you'll know who you're throwing off the stage if you've met the promoter before you kick him off. All right. So out of the dozens and dozens of tours you've done and thousands of concerts, give me 2 or 3 that stick out to you. What are 3 of the most memorable?
Well, I'll tell you what. I have a couple of things. You mentioned Alan Ditch. And Alan ended up, he was with Montgomery Gentry. He ended up with doing a lot of country artists. And he got moved from the Christian market into the country market with an artist named John Barry.
Yep.
And John Barry, I was in Kalamazoo, Michigan, programming out his show. And that next Saturday, I had a show with Aretha Franklin. At her dad was a minister in Detroit, and he had a church, and she was going to be doing a show there. I think it was a Christmas show, as a matter of fact. And so she literally called me on my phone to tell me, I don't want you to do this. I want to be much more representative of what should be in a church, and so on. And I said, I understand what you're after. And she starts describing what she wants during a certain song and so on. And I'm trying to program up this show for John Barry because Alan Ditch had called me in for it. And so I'm sitting there, I'm in the middle of programming a show. You mind if I call you back later? We go through this. And I get off the phone on a program, and I'm racing to make sure we get it all done before doors. And I've got 15-minute break before I got to go back out and get things started as they're letting the people in. And I stepped back and I went, oh my goodness, I just blew Aretha Franklin off on the phone.
But at least John Barry got a great show out of his deal.
Well, it was the first show I did with him. That night he asked me if I could come and do some more shows. I did. And I worked with him for quite a while. And was very excited when he was going to go out and do this tour. And then he ended up with throat problem and had to go in for throat surgery. So the tour got canceled. And then somehow it got mixed up later down the road. And he literally called me because his production manager had gotten somebody else when he went back out. And I told him that, I'm sorry, it didn't work out because I had been calling him and to see what was going on, but he never answered my questions. And so I never got the opportunity I would have enjoyed doing the show. And John literally called me the next day and said, hey, I was livid after I got off the phone with you. I went and talked to my guy, and he says, I need you. I need you to come in and do these shows because my audience is not blind. I want them to have the best show. And I said, well, I'm honored, but you have a production manager who obviously doesn't want me. He goes, well, I can change the production manager, which blew my mind. I'm like, well, production manager is much more integral than just one aspect of your show. And it would be a lot easier to just replace me. So I was really honored by the fact that John liked what I did for him. But it was the same thing with Fred Hammond because we were on a tour after the third year, and we were out on the East Coast, and there's a big snowstorm, so the shows got canceled. And we went back home, and I was able to book another tour within the next day. They had somebody who had called me on something, and I said, hey, I'll come. I'm available now. And so I had gone over to Detroit, which was where Fred was from, and to do an advance thing for Eminem. They were releasing the DVD 8 Mile, and I had to do this big introduction for the CD release.
Sure.
And so I stopped in, and he said, well, we're going to go back and do these shows, now the snowstorm's over. And I said, well, I'm booked now. He goes, how can you be booked? We only canceled it 48 hours ago. And I said, well, I'm booked now. And he says, well, he ain't going to want to do the shows if I say you weren't there. And I'm like, the promoter? What are you talking about? He goes, no, Fred. I said, what do you mean? He goes, Fred will say, if you ain't there, forget it. We ain't going back and doing those shows. And I said, well, that's ridiculous. I mean, I've said all 15 words to the guy in 3 years. He goes, that's what he likes about you. He didn't have to say anything, and it's just what he wants.
That is so awesome.
And it was a big honor to hear that,
Dude, I know the feeling well, though. We've worked together for years and years and years, and I've never had to look at you and say, hey, Miyagi, will you do this? Because you know what to do. You are so intuitive. And you're a step ahead or 2 steps ahead of everybody. So it's just remarkable to work with you.
Like when we did the Christmas show.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, that was just...
Dude, they are glorious.
Most of the Christmas shows I did are probably the most my favorite shows of all time.
Sure.
I loved at the end of the year, after working so hard, getting involved with a Christmas show.
Yep.
And I had the opportunity with you and Gersh and Bren
Yep.
To work at the church and put together and make it be beyond what the church ever had capabilities of doing.
Right.
Really is what always made my Decembers.
Right. Well, to this day, dude, one of us, it's inevitable that week before Christmas, one of us will text each other or call because we miss it.
It was awesome. And my favorite lineup all time with you and how in touch you are spiritually. And I would learn so much from you.
Oh, man. But
this one time, the choir, you call it the choir, chorus, what do you call it? Choir, okay. Choir's up and they're getting ready to do the rehearsal. We're trying to set up the lights and we got this ladder out and so on. We got people milling around and you and I were talking and they started praying and I went, John, they're praying. And you looked at me and you went, yeah, God can hear them. And I just thought, he's right. Everybody's always so uptight and worried about this. God's listening to them.
Right.
He's ignoring us over here. He don't need to be listening to what we're doing over here. He needs to be hearing that. But I mean, he could.
Yeah.
You were so right that it's something that people do. People worry about that.
Yeah. Well, if you think back on it, we were a good 30, 40 feet away from them when we were talking and they were praying.
Well, yeah. Yeah, that.
Everything that was going on in the room needed to happen because we needed to talk to get ready for rehearsal and they needed to pray because, frankly, you've heard them sing.
Oh, that's terrible.
But seriously, so Jim comes in, the choir comes in, they decided that they needed to pray then. Well, they're in the choir loft and they prayed and it didn't affect us. And what we were talking about across the stage didn't affect them. What was going on in the back of the room didn't affect anything. When there's so many moving parts to a production, you can't bring it down every time someone walks in.
Yes. But it was so ingrained into me from churches I had been through that it's like, oh, we got to show respect because we got to allow God to hear them.
Yes.
And you hit it right on the head, is that he can hear them.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad that stuck with you, dude, because the reality is we don't even have to say anything out loud and God hears us. That's the beautiful thing about God. He sees our heart, and that makes me happy that stuck with you. That's awesome. Okay, so here's what I want people to understand about you. You had a semi that you used to pull gear across the country in, and you would come over to our church and bring a semi full of lighting gear, towers, light trusses, moving lights, all kinds of stuff, an entire semi full of stuff. You would unload it. We'd use the high school kids from the school at the church. We would unload it and set up for a week. You were there literally 7 days with your equipment. You would charge me pennies on the dollar, and we hung out and had the best time ever.
But I tell you, it was some of my best times. I mean, you got to realize, John, that I loved doing that. It's what I needed at that time, was to do something and to be able to have my friend be in need.
Oh, wow.
And me to be able to help out with that.
Yeah.
Was such a blessing to me.
Oh my gosh. Well, it was a win-win because I could spend the rest of my life and not adequately be able to say thank you.
Well, I even noticed that even though I don't do Facebook, I was watching somebody and Scott came up.
Oh yeah.
Your brother-in-law.
Yeah.
And his picture was a picture. And I recognized it right off the bat was from the Christmas show with the lights, with him playing his guitar and the yellow lights all streaming from the back. And I went, oh, wow, that's a picture from the Christmas show.
Yep, for sure.
That I think he uses on his Facebook.
Yes, and he used that as his profile picture, I believe, from the very first day that he opened his account. I think that was his profile pic.
Huh.
Those were some stunningly beautiful moments in time.
I loved that song he would play.
Should I Call Him King?
It was just, And I didn't have to do anything. I'd set up a look, and he carried the whole thing. So there's nothing I needed to do.
But the look and the ambiance of his guitar and that look was just crazy.
It was. And we were all blessed to be part of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But I'll tell you, when you talk about favorite show, I got to tell you, and I don't know if you were out during this period of time, so you'll have to remind me, but I think it was like in Florida. We rolled into the show, and it was supposed to be at the high school. It was supposed to be out in the football field, and they took us out to this platform with a tent on it. I was like, this is great. I'm glad you have a tent in case it rains. Where's the stage? And they said, I'm sorry, this is the stage. I said, no, this is the platform with the sound and lights. We run them. That's how much room we need. The stage, this is like the size of a drum riser. This isn't a stage. And they had not fulfilled the requirements of the contractor. And quite frankly, I think they basically didn't understand a lot of it.
Sure.
Which a lot of shows in the Christian market, it happens a lot of times because it is people and churches trying to put on these events, and it's not their full-time thing, so they don't understand. And sometimes they don't understand why their requirements are there.
Right.
So we were thinking, okay, well, they don't have a stage big enough, so we're not going to be doing this. And we started just playing with the football, throwing it around and just have a good time because this show ain't going to happen tonight. And finally, they moved us into the high school cafeteria.
Oh, wow.
And it wasn't a cafeteria because it didn't have a stage. They actually had to bring in a stage and put in a stage. But this was all going on last minute. So we didn't even start until the afternoon to unload the truck and set up. And we were working so hard to try to put on that show that night. And the entire time I was thinking, man, I was so looking forward to a day off. We had been so doing show after show after show. I just was looking for, what a blessing. We're going to have a day off here. We'll throw the football around. We'll go have some good dinner, do some fellowshipping, get a good long night's sleep, and move on to our next show. And so I was very frustrated because now here we're working twice as hard to try to get this up.
Right.
Move it inside. I remember climbing in the ceiling in rafters because they had emergency lights that wouldn't go out. So I had to climb up there and unplug them.
Oh, geez.
So we could have darkness in the room for the show.
Yeah.
And the entire, I was never got dinner, never got a shower. I'm a mess, from climbing around in this dusty ceiling. And we're doing the show, and we got to the point of altar call. And Rick gets with the counselors, out in the hallway, boom, and the band's playing, and Rick comes running back in, and he runs up the stage, and he runs up to Gersh, and Gersh says, this is amazing. We have so many people coming to altar call that we don't have enough counselors.
Oh, wow.
If there's anybody in here who can help us and counsel, we need more counselors.
Cool.
And it was at that moment that I said, I apologized to God for the way I had acted all day and said, but thank you for showing me this is why we're here.
Yeah, I do remember that day well. That was a crazy, crazy day, and it was a fantastic night.
It wasn't the biggest show, it wasn't the best show, whatever, but it was an incredibly memorable show.
For sure.
So that was one of the special ones. Other than that, there's so many shows that they all blend together, and I never know where I'm at.
Okay, so tell everyone, what's the difference between doing a Christian tour or a country tour?
Well, in some senses, they're very similar if it's the top end of the Christian market and it's the bottom end of the country market. But a lot of it has to do with, like a Christian tour, the money isn't there. You can't have a massive, a person, just to put another person on costs money, but it costs more than just paying them. It costs because they're traveling. You have to provide their transportation, their accommodations, all those other aspects. The buses aren't cheap, and as soon as you get over a certain amount of people, you're going to have to get into another bus or another truck if you have more equipment and so on and so forth. So the more it grows, the more it costs. So when you were on a tour like that, you were not just the lighting guy who runs the lights, you're also the lighting tech who sets up the lights or directs to set up. And if you're on a country tour, you're probably in facilities that bring in crews that are experienced, that you basically tell them what the color code on the stuff is, and they understand how to put it together, as opposed to volunteers, and sometimes ones that you have to be cautious with because they're young and they can do things that are dangerous. So you got to worry about safety factors. So it takes a lot more hands-on and a lot more attention to the people that are putting it together, to put it together not only safely to keep the crew safe,
Yeah.
but to keep the artists safe.
Sure.
That it's not going to fall apart on them while they're doing a show.
Right. Which has happened before.
You know, that it's put together right, and no one's going to get electrical shock because something was done wrong. So it's a lot more work.
Right.
You know, it's interesting because I've done quite a variety of artists. You know, when you talk about country, John Barry, Trace Atkins, but I've done rock and roll in the sense of Aretha Franklin and some artists that nobody would recognize their names because they were a one-hit wonder. But I used to also love, I'll tell you that one of the things I love, that a lot of times when people get to where they run lights and that's all they want to do, I used to love, after doing where I go out and do a tour where I'm running lights. In fact, that when that one got canceled, I was happy to go on this other tour where I was going to be the tech. You know, for like Tom Jones or
Stephen Eady.
Stephen Eady, who nobody knows who that is anymore, but used to, they were in the genre of Frank Sinatra. In fact, they opened for Frank Sinatra's Diamond Jubilee tour, but because they would all be in Florida all February long. You know, it's like, oh, what a great place to be in February.
Steve Lawrence and Edie Gourmet, dude, I will never forget. That was the first tour I remember you telling me you were doing. You were doing that tour when you got the White Hart gig.
That's right. I had an opportunity to actually run it.
Yes.
Which I had not done. The same thing with Tom Jones. For years I set it up, and then the lighting guy couldn't get across the border into Canada, so I had to run the show for a handful of shows. But yeah, so I enjoy that, because with Stephen Eady, when we were in Florida, we would set up and we'd be in the same venue for a couple of days, so you could go snorkeling during the day and you just got to be there for the show. And we would have to have headphones on backstage, so if they had any problems, they could tell us what we needed to do, but nothing ever went wrong. So we'd put a 100-foot cable on it and go back into the stage manager's office where he had a Genesis golf game, and we would sit there and play golf while the show was going on.
Right on. Okay, so guess who just tried to call me, Miyagi? He's beeping in right now. Rob Luttrell. So his ears must be burning. So let's skip ahead. My notes, I have this down. What do you remember about the trip we took? Norway on Friday night, Sweden on Saturday, left Nashville Thursday, and flew home Sunday. What do you remember about that weekend?
That actually goes back to John Knox, John Knox is another great human being.
Yes.
But at times he would seem to not be with it completely of what is required of him. And
eloquently put.
So I never lived in Nashville, so I would fly in and meet up with the band, and I met up in Chicago at the airport, and that's when Gersh came up to me and said, "How are your chops?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Well, we might need a drummer." I said, "Why would you need a drummer?" I said, John's right over here. Yeah, this is as far as he's getting because we're going international, and he doesn't have his passport with him. Which John said, "Well, if I tell you I have a passport, isn't that good enough?" Yeah, no, it doesn't work that way.
No.
Well, you could look it up, couldn't you? And by the way, because of my work with the President of the United States, because I used to do a lot of lighting work with campaign seasons.
Sure.
I actually one time was able to travel internationally having forgotten my passport.
He got the idea from you.
I was taken into a room and they did a bunch of checks, and I gave them a bunch of information, and they said, okay, we're going to allow you to fly.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah, it blew my mind. And I asked them why. They said because of your record with the Secret Service.
However, John didn't work with the president.
No, he apparently never had those kind of opportunities. So he never made it. And because both Rob and I had in the past played drums, we were trying to decide who was going to play when we got overseas. And
Right.
back and forth. Well, it makes more sense. Well, what would you do with this song? How could you do? And, we're literally air banding, air drumming to try to figure out these songs and how we would approach them and so on.
Right.
And then we were stuck for almost 6 or 7 hours in Oslo because the luggage hadn't come through.
Yep.
And it was Rob, who was the road manager, and myself, we were the crew. So we stayed behind while everybody else went ahead to get everything done. And then we finally got to the point where the guy said, if we do not leave now, we will not make the show in time. Okay, then we'll leave. The luggage will have to figure out later. So we get in the car, and the guy is screaming down the road on the wrong side of the road. So it's pretty scary. And we finally get to the event, and Rob and I run into the dressing room, and everyone's getting ready to go on stage because it's time to get on stage. And it was like, okay, we figured, well, you're going to find it's a Christian festival. There are going to be plenty of drummers there. That's what we finally convinced ourselves while we were back there trying to get the luggage, that neither one of us was going to play. But it came down, no, we need one of you. And I don't know if Richie Biggs saw the panic in my face, but he said, well, what do you need during the show more, a road manager or a lighting guy? And I said, that tells me where I'm going. And I walked out to my house to run lights. And so he was going to play the drums.
Well, dude, if you remember, that was out in the middle of the woods in Norway, a beautiful, stunningly beautiful setting for this festival, this huge crowd, monstrous stage. There were hammocks tied all the way up these trees, 30, 40 feet in the air. It was just amazing. And they were just excited that we were going to play. They didn't care if it was Rob or you. They were just glad we were going to play because I guess they thought we might not play because Knox actually wasn't there. And all those bags, 15 of the 18 bags we checked didn't get there. I played the show and the clothes that I wore over on the plane. Luckily, I carried my bass over. But Brian and Billy had to borrow guitars. It was crazy.
Well, that's fantastic. I'll tell you one other thing I remember, because you must have gotten your luggage at some point.
I got it about 2 a.m. the first night.
Well, see, and I remember distinctly because I remember you being very generous and offering me a pair of your underwear. I said, we're friends, but I don't think so.
I might have just done that for shock value. Who knows? Well, the thing I remember about that is because all the bags got lost, it was crazy because I came back from that first concert, took all my clothes off, took a shower, washed my shorts, my underwear, my socks, my tank top, washed it all in the shower, and then I took the blow dryer and dried it all. As soon as I got that last sock dry, Rob opens the door of my hotel room, throws my bag across the bed at me, and says, "Congratulations, your bag is one of 3 bags that made it." And I said, "Oh, okay, well, cool. I just washed my clothes in the shower and dried them with the hairdryer, but whatever." And he was mad at me, and he's like, "I can't believe that's all you're going to say to me for all as hard as I worked to get that bag back for you." And that was the night I came up with the saying that used to make him so mad. I would say, "Rob, if you light a fire and put it out yourself, it doesn't make you a fireman. It makes you an arsonist." He was like, "Dude, you suck. Shut up."
But the strangest thing I kept saying to Rob, my luggage didn't make it. He goes, "Yeah, like I said, all the luggage." I said, "No, all the luggage from everybody from Nashville didn't make it. But I didn't come from Nashville. Why didn't my bag make it?"
Right. Well, I'm sure that was, in Rob's defense, one of those 4 different airlines and 4 legs.
Yeah.
Just to save, $40 a ticket or something crazy.
Well, I got to tell you, when we were in Australia and I was playing the part of road manager for that event. And there wasn't really any money. We just needed somebody. Okay, that's fine. But I'm only going to do it to create the front. I'm not going to do, I have other things. I'm not going to do it totally, the job. And I remember getting to the airport and John Knox walking over and saying, get me a window seat. And I looked at it and said, get your own window seat. I'm only a road manager at the show.
I'll bet he loved that. Well, Miyagi, dude, you and I have toured the world and elsewhere many times over, my friend.
World and beyond.
World and beyond. Right on, my friend. All right. Well, I've got to say this because my kids to this day, they're both fully grown. They're married. One has a baby. But they will tell anyone that asks them, how many dads do you have? And they'll say 3. I have John. We have Gersh was our second dad. And Miyagi was our third dad.
Wow.
You had such an enormous impact on my kids. And I just wanted to say thank you for everything you poured into my girls when they were growing up.
Well, I am so flattered and overwhelmed. But I tell you what, I'd love to take credit for part of it because they're such fantastic kids.
Well, they are, but it's because of people like you that poured into them. So if you can get over here before you go back to Belize, dude, come over for family dinner one night, meet Lily, our granddaughter, can meet Kyle, Taylor's husband, and we'll have family dinner and celebrate Miyagi.
Well, I look forward to it.
All right. I want to get you out of here on this. I want you to know that I love and I appreciate you more than you could possibly know.
Well, I love you right back, John. I'm so appreciative to have a friend like you for all these years and still have friends. Because a lot of times, people get to working together and they call each other friends.
Yeah.
But then when you stop working together, all of a sudden it's like, okay, so are we not friends anymore? But we have been friends for years.
Yep.
No matter what.
Yep.
And it's a real blessing to me.
Even when I didn't listen to your voicemails.
It was always frustrating to me that I would call you and you would never answer the phone, and I would leave you a message, and I would leave a pretty detailed message about what we needed to do, what I had available, what was going on, or what we needed to talk about when you had a chance. And inevitably, you would call me back 5 minutes later. And I thought, oh, okay, cool. So what do you think? And you go, what do I think about what? And you didn't listen to my message, did you? And then I would have to go through it all again.
I'll never forget it. If I live to be 1,000, you said, did you listen to my message? And I said, no. What message? And you said, hang up, listen to my message, and call me back with an answer.
I'm in the habit too much of leaving a message. I'm always going to leave a message. I'm not going to be rude and not leave him a message. So I just need him to start listening to the messages.
Hey Rockstar provides digital marketing software and services for your church to generate more interest, create more exposure, and reach more people. Let Hey Rockstar amplify the awesomeness of your ministry. And, as always, Hey Rockstar is a proud sponsor of the Stage Right with John Thorne podcast.
My thanks to you for listening today. Thank you, Hey Rockstar. My special thanks to Mark Meana for being my guest the past 2 weeks. Next Friday, Ronnie Goss from the Goss Brothers, a true Christian music pioneer. Have a fantastic week, everybody.